Of all the cars in the museum, one of my all-time favorites is the number 25 car of Art Chrisman. This thing is historic.
Absolutely. This is arguably the oldest living hot rod. It was actually built, we think, in 1932 by a fellow named Harry Lewis, who built it for racing at Legion Ascot Speedway in East LA. The grille resembles a Miller Indy car, and they kind of think it's a Miller, but it wasn't. Shortly after its circle track career, but it started running at the Dry Lakes meets in the 30s. And this car actually ran on the beach at Daytona in 1957. And this car had every engine you can think of, from Model T, Model A, Model B, flathead, overhead valve Mercury, Arden, Chrysler. From Model T to a Chrysler in the same chassis. The history just pours out of this car.
So this thing predates organized drag racing by 2 decades and wasn't even built as a drag race car.
Correct.
It is a flathead engine, not a huge displacement.
Right.
There is no supercharger. He did have a power adder though.
Nitromethane.
So this was maybe one of the original top fuel cars. And I see more names than just Art's on here.
Right. Art and Lloyd were brothers. You'll see on the front of the car it says Chrisman's Garage in Compton. Their father, Everett, and Art and Lloyd were partners in the business, and it was a typical L-shaped garage, and on the corner was a gas station, and that was operated by Art and Lloyd's Uncle Jack, who went on to become a really famous drag racer.
Greg, you talked about several different power plants in this car, but it wasn't just this section of the car that evolved over the years.
No, it wasn't. It ran at the lakes, as we said, right up in the 50s, and when drag racing came about, Art reasoned that if it was longer, it would go straighter. So sometime in 52, he lengthened the part you see here that much. He added to the wheelbase and added to the length of the body to make it go straighter.
And you had mentioned this, but when I look at the Albertson Olds, that's a very purpose-built dragster. This thing started out as more of a lakester or a trackster, right, and morphed its way into becoming a dragster.
Right. You look at this car compared to the Albertson Olds, and they're really only 5 or 6 years apart in age, which is hard to believe.
The first NHRA Nationals, September 29th, 1955, Wally Parks is going to pick one man to make the ribbon cutting ceremony opening run, and that was Art Chrisman. And then history repeated itself after that.
They found the mayor of Great Bend and a representative of the governor and recreated that with Art, same driver in the same car.
And again, like many of the cars here in the museum, this is not a recreation.
No, sir, that's a real car. Art had the presence of mind to keep this car, and it's amazing because most people, old race car was last week's news and nobody cared, but Art had the presence of mind to keep it all these years. And then this was arguably one of the first cars that started the nostalgia drag race car movement. And he did a beautiful restoration of it. And he and Wally were very good friends. At the first Hot Rod reunion in 1992, Art wanted Wally to drive it, so he put California Hot Rod Reunion, Wally's pit car.
So it's been restored to basically its 1953 iteration. It ended its drag race career with the Chrysler Hemi. The restoration's got a Mercury flathead, but this is the configuration where you could argue this thing really did make some drag race history.
This is almost exactly the way it looked in 1953 when it became the first drag race car to go 140 miles an hour in a quarter.
Art was actually a close friend of mine for several years, and though he's not with us anymore, the fact that his car in this condition still resides in the museum means that you can be a little bit closer to the stories and a little bit closer to the hot rod.
Art Chrisman next, 145 miles an hour, the fastest single engine time of the meet.